and welcome to Just What the Doctor Ordered, the truth about diets. This is the second part in a 4-part series where Wendy Brewer and myself, Crystal Peterson, Grundy County Memorial Hospital dietitians, join Alison St. Germain in a conversation about dieting. Alison comes to us with 26 years of experience. She has a bachelor's degree in dietetics, a master's degree in nutrition. She has a consulting business titled Nutrition for All Bodies. Alison works at Iowa State University, both as a student wellness dietitian and food science and human nutrition associate professor and academic advisor. Again, as you can see by this slide, she has an extensive list of advanced areas of expertise, which we're going to draw from today. So take it away, Wendy.
Welcome back, Alison. We are so excited to have you here. We often have patients very concerned about their BMI. So what is BMI really? And maybe tell us a little bit of the history of BMI.
Sure. If I could throw away BMI and never hear about it again, I would be so happy, because BMI stands for body mass index, and it actually is not a good indicator of health at all. And let me tell you why. First of all, it's not evidence-based, and it was developed back in the 1800s by a mathematician. And he said this should not be used as a measure of health, yet here we are using it as a measure of health all of these years, hundreds of years later. And looking at it, it just basically is looking at your mass. And so that includes, all your bone, muscle, fat, everything, your organs in your body. And somehow the life insurance companies grabbed onto that and put measurements of health where we then, as you have heard, you could be underweight or normal weight, overweight, obese, and all of those terms. And personally using this in long-term care many years ago, because we were required to, and I would get a flag on the residents, almost all of them, for their BMI being too high. And so, of course, you're not going to want somebody in long-term care to lose weight, right? And so I had to do extra work to explain that I didn't want to use this as a measure of their health. But the people that it wouldn't flag were the very thin, frail people who still fell into that healthy range, but they weren't healthy. And so, that's just a testimonial there that what I have used, and it doesn't, is not a good measure. And actually, I never liked it, never have liked it. But what I found out recently is that it actually is a racist measure and sexist measure, because this was developed on European males. And the whole history of it goes way back, looking at how it was meant to keep women under a certain weight and then people of other races under a certain unachievable weight. And so since I learned that, I really don't like BMI.
Thank you so much.
If we don't have BMI, what do we use? What are some helpful measures of health? What should we be looking at?
Yes, very good question. There are so many things we can look at. If you're looking at physical health, then you could look at blood pressure. You could look at somebody's glucose control, their A1C for, longer term glucose control, lipids. There's a whole host of laboratory chemical measurements of health. However, we don't want to get just caught up with that physical health part of it, because mental health is huge as well. And somebody may have all their labs and everything might look okay, but their mental health is not in order. And so there's also emotional health, there's spiritual health, there's intellectual health, but we tend to have a hyper focus on physical health in our culture. And I think that does a disservice to us for sure.
What would you say, how effective has the war on obesity been the past decade or two?
Well, it's been awful. And it's been awful forever because, there's several reasons why, but I think it really boils down to this. So somebody gets put into that obese category which is probably from the BMI, which is probably not accurate anyway. And so what happens with that then is restrictions. And with restrictions come eventually overeating, and then you get into that vicious cycle of dieting. And that weight cycling actually is more harmful to somebody's health than if they would have just stayed at that weight that they were at. And also, I think another big problem is that obesity is considered the problem, when in actuality, it's a symptom of a much larger complex issue. And so if we think of obesity, in fact, I don't even like to use the word obesity, because obesity is weight stigmatizing, and it infers that obesity means illness. And so I prefer to use high weight or BMI over 30 instead of obesity. And so what happens then is, when obesity or high weight is considered the problem, we are missing the root cause of what is actually going on. And so if we think of it as a symptom, as a side effect of something, and then if we're only treating that side effect or that symptom, again, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on something. We just keep doing the same thing over and over, and we're getting the same result of not making headway on what is happening.
Alison, I'm looking at your advanced areas of expertise, and particularly there's a health at every size and health for every body facilitator. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, a health for every size body facilitator is, I went through some training in order to be able to present and do counseling on how to be, weight inclusive. And so health at every size, or HAES is what it sometimes is abbreviated as, is confusing for people, because it's not only about health and it's not only about size. And so it's about health equity. It's about providing healthcare free of harmful stigmas. And so not all bodies come in the same shape and size. We need to honor that diversity. And also, as a practitioner, as a provider, anybody in healthcare needs to be aware of any biases or stigmas they have against somebody of size. And so this little video, it's a short, cute little video about dogs that really illustrates the point. And I think we'll go ahead to the video now and watch that.
There's a big problem at the center of our research on weight and health. What's the problem? Well, picture a society made up of dogs. Let's say poodles are the bossiest group. They're the ones you see down at the doggy park barking at all the other dogs about how to live their lives in order to be healthy. But the problem is, poodles think that every other kind of dog is just a really big, a really small, or a really fat poodle, when actually the other dogs aren't even poodles at all. They're terriers, or mastiffs, or greyhounds, or labs. And all of the thousands of different dog breeds have different lifespans and different health risks. Each one has evolved to use food differently for different specialties at surviving. Some for staying warm, some for running fast, and some for being strong. They're meant to be different sizes and weights. So the poodles think the mastiffs should lose weight, but a starving mastiff never becomes a poodle. The poodles don't understand that dogs come in many more sizes than they can imagine in their poodle-centric ways. So this becomes a problem when it comes to poodle science. When the poodles did their weight and health research and made their claim that lighter dogs are healthier and live longer, they weren't comparing thinner poodles and fatter poodles. They were comparing poodles and mastiffs. So the recommendation for mastiffs to lose weight is based on the false assumption that if all dogs reach poodle weight, then all dogs will have poodle health. But once again, a starved mastiff just isn't a poodle. This poodle science doesn't even test whether a starved mastiff lives longer than a mastiff who has enough to eat, because one would have to compare mastiffs who maintain poodle weight to mastiffs that maintain mastiff weight. And it turns out that starving mastiffs regain weight, which after all is a much better thing than starving. But the poodles can only see that regain as a failure of mastiff self-discipline. Look, poodles are great, but poodle-centric health policy is a nightmare. Good science tells us that it's better to recognize and respect the ways we're different, because how we're treated, having good friends, having access to decent food, a place to play, restful sleep, and medical care make a huge difference in our health and longevity, for all of us, whatever our size.
And so this video just does a really great job of showing that, we don't have a problem understanding that, of course, a little poodle should not be the same size as a mastiff or vice versa. But yet with humans, we have this kind of mental block where we think weight has to be within a certain range and individuals need to look a certain way in order to attain health. And that's just simply not true.
Alison, thank you so much. This is a great place to end. So much good information. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Be sure to join us as we continue this conversation. Hopefully we've got our listeners hooked. We'll join again on Grundy County Memorial Hospital's Facebook page next Tuesday as we continue this Just What the Doctor Ordered series, The Truth About Diets. And listen in on our conversation as we talk about, well, what do we do if we're not dieting? I think you'll find it a very interesting conversation. So thanks again. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Wendy. And we'll see you next Tuesday.